mic is on, like I've ever needed a mic. I want to thank all of you for coming. I know the family is absolutely delighted you're all here and that you've come from so many places. And no one would have been more delighted to see you all than Pam, especially if you brought gifts. But we're here to celebrate Pam today. And we have a few people who want to say a few words. And first, we're going to start with Pam Denniston, her son.
Well, first I'd like to thank everybody for attending and all our friends and the members of our family who I've missed so much. Many of you traveled very far to share this time with us, and that's very much appreciated. I'm certain Mom would want this memorial to be very lighthearted, not sad. So I hope we can smile and laugh as we reminisce. I'm honored to share some thoughts as we remember my mother, Pamela Brandt Denniston. She gave me life, brought me into this world, and nurtured me as a small child with as much love as I believe is humanly possible. Mom always cared for me when I was sick, made sure I had plenty to eat, warm clothes, lots of cool toys, and plenty of books to read. I took her for granted for many years, but she was a good mother, and I'm thankful she even decided to keep me once she realized her firstborn was actually Dennis the Menace. Being an athletic kid, I always liked to climb. Mom told me the story several times of her feeling of helplessness as I climbed the boulders of Central Park in New York as a very young boy, way out of her reach. It was quite a drop and I could have been killed, but I didn't fall, and she was relieved when I returned, excited and unharmed. That's the way my mother was, and one of the things I loved about her. Although it sometimes scared her, she always understood and gave me lots of freedom as she understood my passions, my need for independence, and insatiable appetite for excitement, fun, and play. I will never forget the grin on my mother's face as I looked up at her in the open hospital window after my brother Ron was born in 1969 in Ann Arbor, Michigan. They wouldn't let young kids inside for a hospital birth then. She made sure that I knew that I wasn't forgotten and wanted to immediately share with me the excitement of the arrival of Ron. Prime example of how she was considerate of the feelings of others. After moving to Owensboro, Kentucky, I believe Mom was the driving force in talking Dad into buying a 50-acre farm as a weekend getaway near a little town called Narrows. Of course, my mother was the definition of a driving force. I remember how she made fast friends with several locals there in Narrows. Now, this place was in the sticks. These folks were very poor, simple, uneducated farmers for the most part, salts of the earth good people. They loved my mother, although she was from a different world. Mom just had a knack for and a love of building strong, giving relationships with all kinds of people from diverse socioeconomic backgrounds, never prejudicial or judgmental. While in Kentucky, I'm thankful that Mom was happy to let me have a horse and a mini bike. Now that's where it all started. She gave me the freedom to begin to roam the countryside, engage in all sorts of activities and mischief. So many great memories for me because of her efforts and the fact that she said yes. Our family's final move was here in 1974. She tirelessly cooked and cleaned for all of us, which is no small feat when you have two young boys. I will always remember her delicious baked chicken, although it seemed like we had it a lot. And the special nights when we had meat or cheese fondue. However, she didn't participate in the cooking of squirrels that I would sometimes bring home after a successful hunt. She said okay when I wanted horse number 2, and also understood when fast cars took their place. She survived my teenage years, and I am just thankful for my mother's sake that Ron was not the nutcase I was. My mother was kind of eccentric and flamboyant in the way she dressed and decorated our home. I was a bit embarrassed by some of this, but realized later just how cool that was. She taught me by this, never be afraid to stand apart and just be yourself. Buy the things that give you joy if you can afford them, and always be an original. She even understood my adult love of motorcycles, although I'm sure it terrified her. And she didn't even flinch when I recently answered her question and told her what my latest Harley cost. Mom loved to travel and gave me opportunities to go places and experience things as a kid and an adult that most never get. I am so glad she was able to visit some really fantastic places with my dad after his retirement. They had a lot of fun, and I really enjoyed hearing the report of all these excursions. My mother dearly loved her grandchildren, my nieces Anna and Harper, and my kids Kyle and Grace. She supported their development in many ways, such as enrolling Grace in horseback riding lessons and classes in Art Central and Carthage, and Kyle in a wonderful summer camp in Rolla for several years. She was always very interested in what the kids were up to and how they were doing. I believe she was a very good wife for my father, and their marriage of nearly 50 years is an impressive testament to their commitment and the love they shared. And her choice in him was good, actually the best. My dad exhibited traits of the highest quality character, devotion, and common sense, while caring for my mother. He did this not just during the years of her life, but during the very difficult times of her final days. Dad, for that I'm very grateful. Mom was always there for me from my earliest memories. There's a huge hole in the Denniston family right now, and it will take some time for us to adjust without our matriarch. It's strange to imagine life without her. I think of her often, and I will miss her always, but we'll be okay. My mother was loved because of her caring, giving personality, her sense of humor and warm smile, among other admirable qualities. My mother changed the world, mainly in ways that only her family and friends could understand. She will live forever in spirit and in the hearts and minds of those she touched. Her great traits, hopefully, will be passed on through the generation of her descendants. She accepted her fate with grace, and she was very thankful for what she described to me just a few weeks ago as a great life. With those thoughts, I am comforted. My mother did not attend church, but I know for a fact she believed in God and said her prayers, as we talked about this not long ago in one of the private conversations we shared. She was spiritual and lived by the golden rule. So I'm certain my mother's faith has been rewarded. Every year now I will remember the Maple Leaf Parade in Carthage as the day my mother got her wings. And I hope you don't mind, but I choose to close with a short prayer. If you care to, please join with me. May our God in heaven have mercy on my mother's soul and protect and give peace to those she left behind who love her. Thank you, Lord, for our blessings and forgiveness and allowing her to be such an important part of our lives. Amen.
Hey, is this your phone?
No, that's supposed to,
That's supposed to, oh.
that's our audio.
Okay. Thanks for the heads up. Okay, thanks, Tim. That was delightful. Thank you. Okay, next we're going to hear from Sandy. And Sandy Waters, this is Pam's sister, who's come all the way from Baltimore. I know I didn't say that right, but Sandy.
Watch your step on that.
This certainly is a very impressive group of people. And I didn't think I'd get emotional, but I apparently am. As Pammy's only sibling, I share memories with no one else of our childhood. We grew up in New York City, very close to Central Park, where we spent many happy hours in the playground and on Sunday trips to the Central Park Zoo. My very first recollection of Pam was when I was just under 3 years old and was taken to the hospital to meet my sister. My straight hair had been tightly curled, and I wore a red and white organdy dress. The nurse held up a big, bald baby with drops dripping from her eyes. As an older baby, Pam was pushed in a black lacquered English pram. She would sit up donned in a pink jacket and a matching hat. When it became time for Pam to give up her beloved bottle, it was wrapped, dropped, and broken. Then Pam was shown that the bottle was all gone. I don't remember how she managed without it. Pam was absolutely beautiful. She had short, naturally curly hair and a pure Grecian profile. As a child of 4 or 5, Pam would dress up in our mother's fur jacket, pad herself with a pillow, don a hat, often with a veil, and wear long white cotton gloves. There happens to be a photograph of one of the times. She would go to the front hall, ring the doorbell, and Mother and I would answer. "Hello, Mrs. Higginbottom, how are you?" And the conversation would ensue. We would play jacks and pick up sticks on the black and white tiled front hall. We would roller skate in the kitchen, to be abruptly stopped by the maid 1 floor below, banging on the ceiling with a broom handle. We'd play with our Didi dolls and walk our black and white poodles around the block. We delighted in taking a brand new box of chocolates. We would dash behind the sofa, lift up each piece, and squish it from the bottom. If we liked it, we ate it. If not, we returned it carefully to the box. Pammy had a flair for color, and at no more than 9 years of age, took over our large bedroom. She got the parents to paint the walls a bright yellow, hang sheer orange curtains, and lay a black and white tiled floor, and it was pretty wild. She loved to swim and idolized Esther Williams, a famous swimmer and actress in the 40s and 50s. She also admired Sophia Loren and Gina Lollobrigida, famous Italian actresses, and would stand in front of a full-length mirror and apply her lipstick, pretending she was one of them. Pam hated to wake up, so each morning I had to be gentle and say, "Pammy, Pammy dear, it's time to wake up." And I repeated this until she responded. She loved to go to parties. After one dance, she awakened me by saying, "Sandy, there was a boy who wore a cape." Pam had artistic talent, both in creating designs and written compositions. However, one of her creations was a cake, which she frosted with white toothpaste and took to school. Her breakfasts were not always conventional. Often she would have leftover caviar or chocolate cake before going off to school. Over the last year and a half, I had the joy of sharing these and other memories with Pam. I sent her photographs of us and copies of old family letters, and we discussed aspects of our childhood. Although I always thought we were so different, there were many similarities. For example, we both loved going to the contemporary craft shows. We both collected and loved paperweights, contemporary glass, ceramics, dolls, and quilts. And I was blessed to have had so much time to say goodbye. Our last telephone conversation was when I reiterated to Pam how impressed I was with the way she handled the end of her life. Even a couple of months before her passing, she asked me to hold on the phone while she gave a friend a cake. She always was thinking of her friends. She loved her family and especially loved talking about her grandchildren. She never ceased to tell me how special Elliot was and how devotedly he looked after her. And as Pammy said, I have had a good life. So let us rejoice in her life and reflect on our happy memories. Rest in peace, Pammy. You are a star in the heavens. I send you my love, little sister. Pamela Brandt Denniston, December 11th, 1941 to October 19th, 2013.
Well, that sure rang true, didn't it? All right. I don't know. I'm pretty loud, Elliot. All right. And, you know, Pam grew up in the rarefied atmosphere of New York City. And even though she probably grew her deepest roots here, she remained in contact with her friends throughout her life. And Mary Betancourt, probably her oldest friend, huh, is here to say a few words. She's from New York.
Well, good afternoon. Not going to say anything you don't already know. I've had the good fortune to have known Pamela since I was 14 years old and she was 15. We went to the same school and had mutual friends. Our school, while somewhat posh and exclusive, was also ahead of its time in academics and scholarship. We somehow breezed through, thanks in great measure to our perfectly wonderful teachers, who spoke to us as though they'd personally known Keats and Euclid and Jefferson and Louis XIV. Now, if Pam was your friend, she was your friend. Through thick and thin, on your side, whether you were right or wrong, she accepted you as you were. She didn't try to change you. What an extraordinary quality. There were many years during which I neglected to communicate with her, yet she always sent newsy cards and letters, following up, reminding me that she was around, just checking in, just checking up. How sweet that was. Pam used to remind me of a little terrier with that tendency to continually nip at your heels. Tenacious, reminding you of her presence in your life, of her support, of her concern. I recall as a child learning to swim being taught the buddy system, whereby you were assigned a fellow swimmer, a buddy, to be responsible for and responsible to. And that is what I think of when remembering Pam, the way she'd empathize and sympathize and just be on your side through life's vicissitudes. She was an ally, a cheerleader, devoid of ego and guileless. Your joy was her joy. And your anger or sadness, she always seemed to understand. She might not have agreed, but she understood. Lately, in the midst of her suffering, Pam would call every day. She'd recount her daily social whirl, her errands, the latest, mostly benign gossip, the small tales and details of the life she shared with Elliot and with her friends. Then, of course, she'd ask about you. And what to me was so remarkable was that she truly cared about you and your life and your health and your daily round. It wasn't just a pro forma, perfunctory politeness. How you were, how you felt, meant something to her. As they grew older, Pamela's grandchildren took on a vitality and importance that were noticeable in these last couple of years, and she seemed to love talking about them, taking pride in their accomplishments. and rejoicing in their promise. Sometimes Pam would call and say, "Oh, come on out, Mary, and let's just have fun." Who else do you know would say something like that in such circumstances? Pam never laid a bad trip on her friends, never burdened them. But integral, essential to this generosity, this openness, was the love and support of Elliot, her anchor to windward, her rock, her great caregiver. I'm convinced that she left us as she would have chosen to, amidst the warmth and beauty of her home, having lately reached out to friends after giving away yet another thing that had significance in her life, passing it on, generous to the end. My daughter Amelia wanted to come out. She's in the 7th month of pregnancy. She could not travel with the first child. But she sent something that I'm going to just take a minute to read. If I had to add anything of mine, I would say the following. Pammy has always been a figure in my life thanks to her close friendship with my mother. As I grew older, we became closer, and she was the aunt I never had, and I, perhaps, the daughter that she didn't have. When I heard of her passing, I was sad, but I also knew that Pam was out of pain and could watch over all her friends from above. A perfect perspective for someone like Pam, who loved to know about everything, but mostly she wanted to know about you. A while back, Pammy sent me her vast collection of Maggie Shepherd clothes. As you all know, Pam was an amazing dresser, and to call her Maggie Shepherd pieces clothes is a disservice. They're pieces of art, garments of stature that I look forward to wearing for the rest of my life. These pieces are a testament to Pam's great love for and dedication to art. If Pammy loved what you did or made, that was it. She would support your efforts all the way. The few times I went out to Missouri, I had the fortune of arriving just as Pam had returned from a trip. Cuba, Russia, Bali, or the art fair in Kansas City, all of these places are represented in her home. Cuba has a wall of art, Russia a precious home by the window. A piece of Bali is on my bookshelf, and wealthy artists from Kansas City and the surrounding areas are everywhere in her home. I remember remarking to Elliot at how marvelous it must be to live among so much art, literally bursting from every corner. Yes, it is, he replied, but at times certain pieces I could do without. He replied while looking at one of the many troll-like fairies that were populating the shelves in the kitchen. But that was Pam. She was open to so much, and her passion was contagious. If she liked the trolls, well, you could grow to like them too. And she was so wise about it all without being pretentious. If something was unique, Pammy could see it in a second. She knew what merited attention. Pieces did not need the approval of the masses. Pammy was just fine standing by her choices that she'd made on her own, because they were truly hers. She did not give in to fads. She knew what she liked, and she trusted her taste. After all, she was a New York City girl at heart. We're a passionate breed, us city girls. I remember one of her favorite films in recent years was Far From Heaven. And so when she passed, I rented it and watched it again. A masterpiece of storytelling, and what gorgeous colors permeate the film. A true piece of art, another gem from Pam. Thank you. Long-winded here. Thank you.
It was beautiful. I know. Pam was a collector of things and of people. And, you know, I mean, she cared passionately about whether I ever got my back door fixed. But she also cared so much about Elizabeth and kept track of everything she was doing. And it was just amazing to me. And I'm going to miss her. Okay, next we have from Kansas City, Megan England.
So unlike everybody before me who's prepared such nice speeches, I kind of thought, well, I've been thinking a lot about Pam lately, but I thought I'll just be spontaneous. And I'll just talk a little bit about how we know Pam and Elliot. My first job I held for 10 years at the Kemper Museum of Contemporary Art in Kansas City. And I met them. I ran the museum store. And that was one of Pam's favorite places to come. And she and Elliot, they kind of had their routine. I mean, I talk about spontaneity, but they actually had their very routine trip to Kansas City. And I'm actually from Wichita, 3 hours away, so I saw Pam and Elliot kind of more often than I saw my own parents or my grandparents, my family for that matter. So anyway, I think there was a big purchase. It was the Chihuly, the Chihuly. She came in and she said, we're going to redo our kitchen because of this piece of glass, So anyway, I wanted the transaction to happen. I wanted everything to be good, and, it was a large purchase. So I gave her my home telephone number, and, we had talked a lot and talked about movies, a lot of discussions. And I was getting married to Matt at that point. So we formed a relationship before they even knew who Matt was. But we come back from our honeymoon, lo and behold, we turn on the answering machine, and the first message is from Pam. How is your honeymoon? How is Mexico? And I thought, well, we are friends, And then she would buy the gifts in the museum store for herself, or I'm sure many of you received them yourself, but she always came in and bought something. And then she started bringing me things. And then time went on, and, I was kind of still broke and young, and they would take me over and have, come over to the cafe. You just take your lunch break. Come over and eat with us. And, okay, of course. I said, oh, you must have wine. You must have wine. I said, okay, I'll order wine. And then I was the only one ordering wine. So it seemed like a lot of times she would just want to live vicariously. Oh, no, we're not going to have dessert, but you need to have dessert. So, and then, the friendship grew, and we would go out to dinner with them when they came into town. And then we found ourselves coming here to visit them in Webb City, and we had the opportunity to meet Pedro and Mary, and I feel like several others. The last year we went to the birthday party. So anyway, Pam, for me, she was kind of a mother figure of sorts and a grandmother figure of sorts, and just a really good friend. And she kind of showed me that friendship has no boundaries. She was one of my best friends, actually. I'm sorry, she's probably rolling her eyes right now. She probably did want it lively, and but I guess the one thing I would like to say is, we like to say rest in peace, but I don't see her doing that. I see her bouncing around the universe and, finally being free and being able to experience all there is to life, and watching us and helping us do the same. So I was very inspired by Pam, and just, I guess, the room is full of us inspired by Pam. So anyway, I won't miss her.
Thank you. I'm going to put this Kleenex up here because it looks like we're all going to be needing it. It was just so typical of Pam to befriend everyone around her. Anybody that she interacted with on a daily basis or weekly basis or monthly basis that she liked, she cultivated a friendship with them, and that's part of the reason we valued her so much. I remember when she went to the hospital at Barnes, she didn't want a single room. She wanted a roommate. and, you know, knew all about the other women's lives, her friends, what she ordered for lunch and dinner. I mean, it was just you know, amazing. She was amazing. Okay, next we have Amy Cole from Joplin, a travel companion of Pam's. Come on up, Amy.
Well, I am going to read a letter that I wrote to Elliot shortly after Pam passed. Dear Elliot, I miss Pam. I had my first acupuncture session and felt sadness. Pam would have listened to every detail with intense interest. She would have wanted my opinion in detail. She would have checked in with me several days later to see how I felt. It's been close to a week and I haven't shared the experience. I was spoiled by her in the brief time I knew her. Not everyone is capable of that kind of genuine, intense interest, so I'm left missing it. I've been thinking a great deal about our trip to Kentucky. Pam was the only person on the planet who could get me to Paducah, Kentucky to visit a quilt museum. Surprisingly, it wasn't painful at all. I laughed often over those 2 days and admired her ability to see what she wanted while making sure everyone on the trip was enjoying themselves. I now view the whole experience as a guide on how to deal with terminal illness. As a clinical psychologist, I have watched many people in that process, but I've never seen such grace. She made me realize that enjoying the small things should be the focus. Pam made sure we had chocolate-dipped cones at McDonald's to break up the car ride, both ways. After we checked into the motel, she made sure we enjoyed a good meal with Kathy. After we got back to the motel, she quickly put her swimsuit on and we went swimming. When a large group of prepubescent boys monopolized the pool and splashed all of us, Pam smiled and said that those boys needed to wear themselves out. She expressed no annoyance with the boys, who were really annoying. She was talkative throughout the long drive and was truly extraordinary company. Her openness, easy laugh, and consideration for everyone made the trip, even the quilt museum, a treat. In recent years, I have made grace one of my personal goals. Pam gave me a model, particularly with our eventual end. I never once heard self-pity or anger. She was open about her impending death, and the only concern I heard her express was how it would affect you, her sons, and her grandchildren. I feel lucky to have known her. I miss her.
Thank you. Yeah, Pam did have the ability to enjoy the moment. I mean, the craft fair in Ozark, Missouri was as exciting as the museum store. Of course, it was probably better to go to the museum store before the exhibit, just in case you ran out of time. Okay, next we're going to hear from Pedro, beloved friend. Calavero, sorry, I should have said that. Terrible.
I have some very brief remarks. I had no idea it would be this painful to write about Pam. So my remarks are really, really brief. Well, thank you, Elliot. Thank you, Ron. Thank you, Tim. Thank you to all of you present here for allowing me to share my thoughts and memories with you. For most of us, or for many of us that knew Pam, she was not a Denniston in the first place. She wasn't either Elliot's wife or Tim and Ron's mother. Above all, Pam was herself. Pam was Pam. And she was a character, like one of our friends could say. She was peculiar, sometimes even eccentric. I don't think I will ever see another person wearing a fur coat to a local fundraising event for the Democratic Party. Or someone drive by Sonic and get a half-price drink on the way to an expensive French restaurant in Kansas City. But that is precisely what I loved in Pam. Like her, I also think that you feel like dressing up, the occasion does not matter. And she and I shared the belief that it was a crime to let a cheap deal go by. And that when it comes to food, no meal is too expensive if you really enjoy it. As a matter of fact, many of the lessons that I learned from Pam had to do with shopping and dining. For example, she taught me to request the same waiter, once you have identified a good one, in order to avoid having your dinner spoiled. She taught me that if you find something your size for less than $20 and more than 70% off the original price, you had to buy it. Because you will come to love it. She told me that if a good sale is going on, you buy all the things on the rack, try them at home, and then return what you don't like. And following her, now I buy gifts for the entire year when stores are having a closeout. The item and the recipient to be determined later. But some other Pam habits I wasn't able to make my own, even though I tried. I keep forgetting to write thank you notes to everyone with whom I have shared a lunch or dinner. And I don't call all my acquaintances on a regular basis to find out how they are doing. We also had our differences. She never convinced me that it was worth staying at La Quinta Inn in order to get free nights. Or that the crafts at 10,000 villages were unusual and beautiful. And I never liked the Where is Waldo game that we played tracking down the Peruvian Connection store and its ever-changing location. I remember the last time we had a serious conversation with Pam. It was after the movie Blue Jasmine. We were both thrilled by how much the clothes and the accessories gave weight to the characters in the film. And we were both in love with Jasmine's white Chanel jacket. Unfortunately, we had to keep our discussion short. We were surrounded by people that had no idea about the differences between a Fendi, Hermès, or Louis Vuitton handbag. Our company, dwelling on what has already been settled. Woody Allen is a good, outdated comedian and a run-of-the-mill movie director. Pam and I understood each other because, for us, beauty does not exist as an abstract idea, but rather as a tangible expression of our lives. Pam surrounded herself with beautiful things, paintings and pieces of art that she found original and meaningful, fabrics that were a delight to the touch, and perfumes that were a pleasure to smell. People would say their house is a castle, a fortress or a palace, even a cave. Pam never said it, but she made her house a museum. A museum in which she was both the curator and the most frequent visitor. Like any good curator, she was constantly changing the displays because she was also in charge of acquisitions. Following the lead of the Nelson Atkins Museum, Pam built a new addition to the old building containing the permanent collection. That is, the Cuban wall, the baskets, dolls, etc. Initially, the addition was called a new kitchen. But very soon it became clear that its main purpose was to house the temporary exhibits, which, in fairness, included some polished pottery. There was a lesson for all of us in Pam's aesthetic endeavors. Beauty is within reach, and it can be part of our lives every day. Pam was a character, and she also had character. I hope she will forgive me for not being able to learn the last thing she taught me. She died with dignity, and I don't think I will be able to do the same. I'm missing her already.
And Pam did die with great dignity. Although, one of the times when she came around at the end, she did smile when I gave detailed compliments of her nail polish. I will say that. But she led a beautiful life. And next, we're going to hear from Gwen Murdoch. From Joplin.
Well, I can't think of a better place to be than to be surrounded by Pam's friends and family. It's nice to be here. And I know Pam would like to be here as well. She always loved a great party and threw quite a few of them herself. Pam was a better friend to me than I think I ever could be to her. She was always ready to celebrate any of your triumphs, but she was also happy to admire in your defeats as well. Every aspect of her was connected to her friends, myself included, emotionally. I loved Pam's aesthetic sense. I loved her sense of color. The first time I went to Pam and Elliot's house was in the early 90s, and I thought, I think every single thing in here is beautiful. I really like it, but it's too much. Little did I know what the next 20 years would bring. So Pam loved to shop, and I loved to drive, and so we took quite a few shopping excursions around Missouri. And on those drives, I got to hear about a slice of life that I would never hear about from any other person in my circle of friends. About her growing up in New York City, about her time in this posh girls' school in New York City, her travels around the world to places that I would never have a chance to visit. All of it was a new adventure while we were on our own particular adventure. And so I will always relish the way that Pam was open to sharing her lives. Anytime we would embark on a shopping trip, Pam would almost always ask me, "What are you looking for?" And very often for me, these shopping trips were a reconnaissance mission because Pam had very definite ideas about what she wanted to look at and what how much time she was willing to invest in looking at stuff she wasn't interested in, which was almost no time at all. Early on, I made the mistake one time of saying, well, if I saw a white shirt that I liked, I probably would buy it. And often Pam was frustrated with me not buying things. So for the rest of the afternoon, when we went into any dress shop or any woman's store at all, Pam would nab a sales clerk and say, "Do you have any white blouses?" So I ended up looking at ruffled blouses, lace blouses, sleeveless blouses, and never found the white shirt I was hoping to find on that particular day. But like Pedro, I learned how to shop with Pam. The other thing that was remarkable to me about Pam was her utter unself-consciousness. She was who she was. So if we were in the lingerie department and she needed to get the clerk to find her something else to try on, she would step out of the dressing room in her underwear and talk to the clerk. And I thought, no way could I do that. But truly, she was a great friend and a great companion, and we had lots of fun. Last week, I adopted a Pamism. A couple of weeks ago in a class, one of my students told me that he was looking forward to when we got to the next chapter in the textbook. And so I saw him in the hall after we had embarked on that chapter, and I said to him, "Are you just loving this new chapter?" And like the rest of us, he was kind of taken aback when, we get that kind of question from Pam. But eventually he said, yeah, it's a good chapter. Last Saturday, my realtor was having an open house on Sunday, so I had a number of chores that I had to do, including mowing the lawn, and I discovered for the first time since 1983, I had to buy a new lawnmower, and then, of course, I bought the cheapest one, and so I had to put it together, and then I mowed the lawn, and then I had to fix the fence, and then I took the back door off its hinges because the weather stripping under the back door was looking kind of ragged and was intruding into the kitchen, so I didn't think that would fly for the open house. And then it was about sunset, and I thought, damn. This time of day, Pam would call me up, and she would say, "What have you been doing all day?" And I would tell her, and then she would be so amazed. Wow, you did so much. You're so competent. And I thought, who else is going to celebrate my mundane competence but Pam? And for that, I will miss her. On the day she died, I happened to catch the fireworks from the Maple Leaf Festival that were exploding over Carthage. And I thought, those fireworks really represent Pam's spirit evaporating into the atmosphere. And I hope that I can absorb some of that spirit, as I know all of you do as well. So, thanks.
Thank you, Gwen. I know that Pam really enjoyed traveling with you and admired how you drove cross-country. And now we're going to hear from Elliot, Pam's beloved husband, who has some important words to impart.
Sure. I couldn't possibly say something serious today. It would just be emotionally too hard for me. But a week ago, I was sorting through Pam's desk, and in the back of this little drawer in the desk were something I never knew she'd written. She called it Rules to Live By. And I pulled it out and started reading it, and I thought, after all that you've heard about Pam today, you would love to hear her. It's okay, Maeve. It's okay, Maeve. We love you, Maeve. I thought, in view of all the compliments people have given Pam today, that you'd like to know what her rules for life were. And so here they are. There's always room in the house for one more painting. There's no such thing as too much perfume or too much sweet and low. Always drink from a straw so you don't smear your lipstick. When you're on that diet that says you can eat anything you want one day each week, that day starts at midnight, not dawn. Always try to be in the delivery room with your friends when they're giving birth. Whenever one of your friends buys something like a new water heater, be sure to call them the next day to ask if they are, quote, just loving it. Play Monopoly like you're using real money, even with your grandkids. Expiration dates are for suckers. All prices are negotiable. If it's on sale, you need it, and the bigger the discount, the more you need it. Always inform your friends what they need to buy and where they can find it for the best deal. Buy presents well in advance. 3 years early is fine, and maybe even for events that might not happen. Birthday presents should be opened just after greeting guests and preferably prior to serving food or blowing out candles. Finally, no matter how early your guests arrive at a restaurant, always be there first. And no matter how much fun anyone's having, when you're ready to leave, the party's over. I have to give credit for these to several other people, and I'm probably going to miss some, but a lot of credit goes to Ron. A lot of credit goes to Barry Brown, who wrote Tam's top 10, 11 favorite qualities for her 60th birthday, and a lot of credit goes to Marla. So I'm just reading other people's stuff.
Well, I too am incapable of saying anything serious right now because I wouldn't be able to hold it together. I just have been grateful for Pam's friendship. She's been my friend for 32 years, and hardly a day went by then I didn't hear from her. And when the hard times were there, I heard from her several times a day. Sometimes it seemed annoying, but I miss it now. And I'm sorry I won't be able to pick up the phone and call and tell her about today, because she would have wanted to hear every detail. We have for you the rules. They're printed at the back table. If the gentleman at that table would take the lid off, everyone can get their own copy to take home with you, to put on your refrigerator. It's part of this bag, so that Pam can continue advising you about your life for the rest of your days. It's on heavyweight paper that can withstand some moisture. We also want to welcome you to eat. We have offered you Pam's special cancer diet food out here. She followed. We have her favorite breakfast, key lime pie, lunch, cake, dinner, cheesecake. And she handled herself with just such grace and dignity and lasted so long. Who knew? Maybe this is why. So thank you all for coming. And we know that she would be glad just because there's cake.